one useful thing to consider as well is just to look back during the NASDAQ.com bust, because we also had a commodity bull market forming just about at the same time that we saw that bust occur. And basically, what happened then was, these commodity stocks were just basically just moving sideways, while the remainder of the market was just kind of grinding down into the dirt. And then a couple years after that, I think it was like 2003, 2004, is when these resource stocks started really taking off. But nonetheless, if we do follow what we saw back 20 years ago, we should still be overperforming the general market, but we also might still be going down just at a much slower pace. But this kind of stuff is really hard to position yourself around. It makes it easier if you were able to get in at super cheap prices. Like Joker and I, we were able to get in back in May of 2020. So it kind of helps us stomach a lot of the volatility that we might have to endure just because we've got that that padding when it comes to going underwater. So it really just depends on, I guess, when did you kind of enter the trade, and how long are you willing to actually hold out? I mean, that's another thing. You can't keep this money sequestered, forever. But the longer you can keep it in the trade, it plays to your advantage as well.
Yeah, I'm not, in any big hurry to, cash in or anything tomorrow. I'm financially able to be patient, so it's not a big problem for me. So yeah, I kind of got into the trade late because I didn't really even hear about the thesis until probably maybe early 22, before I even heard about it. So it's once I heard about it, then it was like, yeah, okay, this looks interesting.
Yeah, and another question to ask yourself is, what would make you feel worse?
Oh, definitely.
Not
If I got
losing.
out now and missed it, I'd
Yeah, if you
probably
got out now and
just
missed
kill
it
myself.
versus the. So yeah, there you go. There's no. I mean, there's. You can make error one of two ways. So I mean, there's always a chance of error, no matter which move you make. You just gotta figure out, like, if it goes down, this, in my mind, at the very least, I'm not saying it's 100% certainty, but these things have to rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
Eventually, at some point. I see it as an eventuality, whether it takes a year, 2 years, or maybe even 10 years. I don't know for sure.
Yep.
But I do know that the end result, we should be, peaking our heads above at least $75 uranium, which is what Bank of America says is the ceiling. I think it should be a lot bigger than that, especially since they've had to revise their ceiling from last year already. So,
well, it sounds good. I'm positioned in SPUT, URNJ, and Cameco, and a few other explorers and miners. But so I think I've got it spread around pretty well. But I like to try and keep things simple.
yeah, I mean, but I mean, you're getting a 9% discount on that if you just buy that today.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so it's essentially a slam dunk, in my mind.
So anybody have any more information on ZPut, Zuri Invest?
I think they've been fairly opaque in terms of what they're planning to do. Nothing from my end.
Well, that should be interesting. Hopefully they'll start some action here soon.
So, Bubba, how did you pick your stocks? Like, who were the resources you looked at?
Well, yeah.
So, that's kind of what I like to know. How did you make the decision?
So
of
I
this company
started
over this?
So basically I retired and I took over my own investments at that point. And then I started, looking and saying, okay, and at the time I had just gotten, basically I moved everything to cash. I don't know when when the NASDAQ peaked. I don't recall, like the end of December 21, January 22, something like that. But I went to cash at that point because I knew things, it was pretty obvious because, Jay Powell was talking about raising interest rates, and, I had used a financial advisor, and I was basically saying, okay, I want you to go to cash. And he kept on trying to put me back into the NASDAQ, and it kept on going down. I'm going, no, this isn't going to work. So anyway, at that point, I just had everything in cash, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to, beat inflation and, try to make some money in the long term. And so I can't remember exactly how I found out about it. I started becoming a fan of Andy's on Finding Value, and then from there I found out about Jason Hune and the Uranium Insider, and sort of I don't know exactly the whole sequence, but it sort of blossomed from there.
Yeah, Andy's really good. I follow him pretty closely as well. I used to, I still do, but before I made the channel, I would keep up with his stuff pretty much daily.
For sure. We got the Liberty Offensive in the house. Jump up if you want. And also, you can add me, or you can add someone as the co-host as well. When they are the co-host, they can turn people's mics on and off, or put them on whenever they want to, in case the room gets a little bit bigger. But Bubba, it sounds like you got some good picks in there, and it'll be a little bit of a waiting game, but that's the way the game is. You just got to wait it out a little bit.
Hey, Alex, I just made you a co-host, by the way. Anyone else in the room want to talk about what they think about the current market? Are we on the verge of a breakout? When did you get into uranium? Anyone else? All right. Alex, do you think you have any other questions you want to ask Bubba and Joker or anyone else in the room?
I kind of want to have Liberty come up here. He's a chartist also, so I want to get his opinions on some things before we cut it close. I just don't know if he's driving or anything where he can't talk that much. But if you can try to put him on if you can, or invite him on.
Yeah, I'll put him on. Okay.
All right, Liberty, are you there?
What's up, Alex? How you doing, brother?
Oh, excellent. So we're starting the Twitter Spaces again. I gotta ask you. I mean, what's going on in the charts? We're about to hit a breakout. I mean, it seems like, hey, we can do this. We've got this.
In particular, uranium, I assume, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, I do still study the charts. I'm not quite as active as I was. Life has changed for me quite dramatically, so I'm not as finely tuned as I once was, but I do pay attention to see what's going on. And if you remember, Alex, my videos at one point, I talked about how the uranium space was kind of diverging from itself. And after being in sync for so long, the charts were just following each other so crystal clear. They were all in perfect sync. There was even a lot of synchronicity with the gold and silver space at the time, and that helped make it very easy to chart and predict things, especially with the macro news. It was just all in this wonderful flow. And uranium at that time was a very easy thing to predict. I think that a lot of this bifurcation has continued. You'll see things like Cameco that are kind of running away, and you'll see others, like, for example, energy fuels that's not keeping pace, right? And so you have clear leaders that are running away. And this is something that we talked about a long time ago in the prior uranium spaces, is that this might happen, right? Where these clear winners, these flagship companies might do that. I think that's what you're seeing. I think to be a little bit more specific to your question and what you're asking, I think when you look at the charts like a Cameco, for example, you're sitting at 3076, and you're coming up to what's previously been resistance, about that level. The RSI looks good. I mean, it's trying to get back into this channel that had started back in July 21. So this is 2 years later. It is once it fell out in about, say, October 22, it's really struggled to get back in. It's made a couple attempts, but it's been denied every time. I would say this. I think it looks pretty healthy and strong. I think you've got very strong support now about that 2660 level. And if it can keep pushing, you may see a sell-off to come back and retest this trend again after that. But overall, I think it looks quite healthy.
What about the United States and Canada and Europe? Are you still invested in any one of those countries, or are not
US
still?
and,
Are you?
US and Canada. So US, I had real estate there in the past. I'm out of there. Would I buy real estate now in the US or Canada? As long as rates are rising, no. I prefer to be in cash markets where interest rates don't have an impact on the market because there's no lending. I feel that's fundamentally a bit healthier in a rising interest rate environment. Do I have exposure to the US and Canada? Yes, through stocks. I have quite a few, US and Canadian stocks. As for Europe, I don't quite have a lot of European stocks. I have a little bit of real estate left.
Gotcha. What opportunities do you see on the table at the present moment? I know you mentioned Uzbekistan in 2019, but what do you see today in 2023?
I think a big trend is people from our countries. So from the West, whether that be Western Europe or North America, feeling a bit disenfranchised from the system and wanting to leave. And you see it across the political spectrum. So it's not just a Republican thing or just a Democrat thing, whatever. Increasingly, you see people that leave places like Canada, like the US, because they're sick of politics.
The only thing they agree on.
Sorry?
It's the only thing they agree on.
It's the only thing you agree on. And they just leave. They just want nothing to do with it. Again, I have clients from both sides of the aisle. People are sick of it. They just want to live in peace somewhere where the weather's better, where life is cheaper, and where they don't have to deal with the whole drama and crap show. And especially as people retire, and now they can also work remotely. So hey, suddenly living in Costa Rica or Colombia is becoming a lot more. It doesn't mean you have to be poor there or rely on like a pension or a trust fund. You can actually live in Panama, pay less taxes, and work from there. Before that was only for very few people, but now logistically this is available to a lot of people, to millions of people. So people are starting to understand the power of this. So I think this trend, which you can play by investing in some key hotspots where such people tend to gather, is interesting.
What about cultural differences? Like, how do you do you run into issues with cultural differences with the countries you partake in?
Yeah.
How do you mitigate that?
Patience. Generally speaking, comparing to a North American context, as soon as you venture into the Middle East, Latin America, you're just going to have to be patient because people are just not as fast.
Got it.
And you can go there, be all American, make a scene, blah, 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 blah. People are just going to like get into their shell and just like stop talking to you. No matter how irrational it would be to stop talking to you. They just will stop talking to you. In a lot of cultures, you see that.
Where's your home country, Ladislas?
Like where I'm from?
Yeah.
That's a complicated one.
Okay.
I'm French passport.
Got it.
But I lived in Canada for a long time.
Got it. So you mentioned the precious metals, you mentioned uranium. What other kind of sectors are you looking at? Are you just sticking to the commodities, or do you venture out outside of resource investing as well?
I venture out, but right now I have a hard time venturing out when I can buy into great companies that like P ratios of 3 oil companies giving me dividends of 20% with governments doing everything in their power to reduce exploration.
Right.
I just have a hard time finding better value.
Yeah. So do you see the oil companies, what is it, the drillers or the
Yeah, the drillers as well. I mean, that's more speculative, but just from a dividend point of view, companies like
Chevron?
I don't touch the Americans. They're a bit too woke, which goes against the core of what an oil company is. If I want to go woke, I'll go buy some woke company, not like an oil company that pretends to be woke. I'll go straight for, Petrobras in Brazil, Ecopetrol in Colombia. They're dishing out divvies of like 20% plus at like extremely low P ratios. It's hard to say no to that.
Is there a most convicted sector you have in mind? Like, what would you say would be your most convicted out of all
That's a very
commodities?
good question. That's a very good question. I am across a few different sectors because, I could be wrong. So I'm across a few sectors.
Got it. So there's not one, like if you had to choose only one, there's very hard to choose. Or just two, or just, what would be your top two?
So I like real estate in Latin American countries where North Americans are moving to and are expected to move to. From a safety point of view, I think this is interesting. Uranium I find very compelling, but as a speculation, it's a compelling speculation, but it's about, I'm very aware that I'll have to get out of Dodge at some point.
Yeah.
Like quickly.
Yeah, because uranium shoots up pretty quick itself. You look at the other prior bull markets, it's just a hockey stick for like 2 months and then back down. So
for like 15 years, yeah. So I think buying's the easy part on this one. Selling is like that's where your skills are going to be exposed.
Yeah, because you're going to leave money on the table.
You have to.
You're not going to get this off. Yeah, because this thing's going to.
Hey, we're here. We're both like talking, but will we control the internal greed? I don't know. I hope so.
USA plans continue to rely on foreign sources of uranium supply. So this chart looks at uranium, United States uranium purchases by foreign suppliers. And it's in thousands of pounds of U3O8, all right? So the biggest supplier, and we've also got it stratified by year. So we've got 2018 in blue, we've got 2019, let me just a little bigger for y'all. All right, so we've got 2018 in blue, 2019 here in orange, 2020 in green, 2021 in yellow, and then red is 2022, all right? So Kazakhstan was a big supplier of for the U.S. in 2021. But as you can see across all these countries, U.S. purchases of uranium were down pretty much across the board except for Canada. Canada actually went up in 2022. But Kazakhstan saw a significant decline from just over 16,000 or 1,000, so 16 million pounds of uranium bought from the U.S. down to just under 10 million. But we also see an increase in Uzbekistan. But here is what it's saying. U.S. nuclear plant owners and operators purchased less uranium in 2022 than in 2021 and at a higher price. Higher price. Okay? Less uranium at a higher price. According to the EIA, latest annual uranium marketing report, most of the uranium delivered in 2022 was of a foreign origin, with Canada and Kazakhstan together providing more than half the total. All right. What about Russia? There's a lot of talk about banning Russian uranium, U3O8 purchases. Well, that would be about 5 million pounds off the uranium, off of the market as it relates to the United States. So says here, the 40.5 million pounds of U-308, total uranium purchased by the owners and operators of the U.S. civilian nuclear power reactor in 2022 was 13% down on 2021's total of 46.7. The weighted average price of $39.08 per pound for 2022 was 15% higher than 2021's weighted average price of $33.91. And the highest since 2016. Now it's gone well above that in 2023. Most of 2022 uranium deliveries were of foreign origin, with Canada the top source at 27% of total deliveries, followed by Kazakhstan 25%, Uzbekistan 11%, and Australia 9%. U.S. origin material accounted for 5% of the total. So only 5% of the uranium purchased by the United States was actually from the United States. Some 15% of the uranium delivered was purchased under spot contracts at a weighted average price of $40.70, with the rest long-term contracts at a weighted average price of $38.81. So the ball is in motion. The game is changing, you guys. This is 2022. Just wait till what 2023 brings. I mean, we've still got the fall of 2023, which is when uranium season really starts to pick up. It's in that autumn to spring time period. All right, well, let's jump into something else. I think that covers pretty much the gist of it. This is an article from the WyomingPublicMedia.org. As nuclear power gains steam, uranium mining and its impacts may grow in the Mountain West. Well, there you go. The United States is buying more uranium, or less uranium, and less of it is coming from its own borders. So we're going to start seeing more of an effort to get this stuff from the United States, from our, from our own soil. So pretty much what we're covering here, this kind of looks at the U.S. Production of uranium since from 1950 to 2017. You can really see how it's really kind of tapered off here. I mean, this is pretty telling. And essentially we're going to start seeing more uranium production coming out of domestic sources here in the United States. So stuff is inescapable. Let's head on over to Twitter. This is a chart looking at terawatt hours generated by Denmark, Portugal, and the UAE. And we're segmenting it across wind and solar for Denmark in blue, wind and solar in Portugal in red, and then the UAE in terms of its nuclear energy generation. So the UAE was nil all the way up until 2019. We saw some build out in nuclear energy in 2020, and then boom, it's just skyrocketed. All this time that it took to onboard all this wind and solar for Denmark and Portugal, the UAE was able to catch up to that within the span of a couple of years. So I kind of talk about this on my Twitter. If you don't follow me on Twitter, you should. It's at Capital Cosm. Link in the description below. But we're essentially seeing, this idea that nuclear power takes so long to onboard is a myth, guys. This is purely an artifact of excessive bureaucratic red tape. And I had Doomerg on about a month ago, and he talked about that as well. If you haven't seen that interview, I highly suggest you watch it because it also debunks a lot of the myths surrounding nuclear energy. So this is a chart on Japanese sentiment on restarting nuclear power plants. Now, most have been in the opposed column for quite some time after the events of Fukushima. This red line here is your opposed. This blue line here is the amount of people that are supporting nuclear power. And for the first time since Fukushima, we've got the majority of respondents in Japan supporting nuclear energy. Now, Japan going offline with nuclear or not offline, but significantly down. Downplaying their purchase, not downplaying, but significantly reducing their uranium purchases was one of the catalysts that brought down the last uranium bull market as a result of Fukushima. But now, for the first time, sentiment has switched over to the other side. So, looking good, guys.